Yeah, recording is in progress, they say now. So how are you today, Christopher?
Yeah, good. Good. I've been clearing all the wood and chopping the wood. Hopefully it won't be too cold now, but it's always a bit of an issue keeping warm in the winter.
So wait, so you need to you warm the house with firewood?
Well, I've got a stove, and well, oil's become very expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that, and they blame Putin for it.
Everything's getting expensive,
Mm.
and yeah, and so I've been working outside today. It's such a nice day, and I'm going to take the dogs for a walk, and I don't feel like sitting in front of a computer. So,
oh, that's great. And we just started. But
okay.
how it's a farm. You're living on a farm, right?
Well, at one time, it's a small holding, yeah.
Uh-huh. But you have animals though.
Yeah, I got a few animals.
I heard
a pesky animal right here that's really annoying me.
Yeah.
He's being really a nuisance. He wants to go for a walk. And another one down there.
Okay, but I heard on one of your songs, one of the songs of your new album has your animals on, right?
Yeah, there's one about the chickens and there's one about the lamb.
Yeah.
Yeah, mixing up the medicine.
Yeah.
Do you have the album?
No, I'll be honest. All my answers here will be honest. But right. But yeah. So basically, you're Chris Jagger. I found you. You came here to Prague to what, like a documentary and some concerts and recording some music, right?
Yeah, we did 3 shows, 2 in Prague and 1 in Kolin, just outside Prague.
Yeah. And there was a TV crew following you around.
There was. And I was supposed to have come out once or twice. It got delayed because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I was supposed to come out, I think, last December. Mm-hmm. And then that got a bit mad before Christmas. So it was better that we delayed it a little bit. And yeah, we had a really good time in Prague, and everyone was very, very kind and looked after us very well. Mm. Yeah, I came out. It was right at the time when Putin attacked Ukraine. So that the first night there was a big concert in the Wenceslas Square.
Yeah, you got it right.
And I went there, and yeah, and that's been going on ever since. Been very depressing, the situation, and it's going from bad to worse. And I've been very upset about everything because I got Polish friends, and they're quite close to the Ukraine, and I wanted to go there actually and play a while back, and I never managed to do it. I wished I had, and it brought it home when I got to Prague of how close Czech Republic is to, Ukraine. Yeah. And of course, people of my age and friends, contemporary friends, they already lived under the Russians for years and years. There's no desire to go back to living under the Soviets again.
No, it's been, I mean, Russia has always been such a significant power somehow in this region. I think it's a very kind of, as you're saying, in a way traumatic for people to think that something like that could come again. I mean, I've been living here for 13 years, and it's one of the first things that I heard is, Russia is bad. I mean, and the memories related to that. But on the other hand, it's interesting because, like you lived through this before. I mean, you lived through Cold War, you lived through the end of communism, and do you think
it didn't really affect anyone? It didn't affect anyone in this country. We kind of pretty fortunate. We got an island and we haven't been invaded for a long time. But if you lived in Poland, you get invaded from the east and you get invaded from the west. You never know who's going to invade you. I mean, apparently in the west of Ukraine, when the Nazis came, they were happy because they were so fed up with the Russians.
Yeah.
They welcomed the Nazis. They couldn't be worse than the Russians.
Yeah, that's actually crazy.
So, this, it's always said that Poland faces both ways, both faces east and west. This is the predicament. So, and I just was reading this morning of quite a lot of musicians in Moscow, in Russia. As soon as they say anything against the war, which quite a lot of them have done, they've been cut from everything. Radio, no shows, no gigs, nothing. And quite a lot have expressed their discontent and their dislike of this war. And Putin just had a big concert where he was like the star turn, and the only musicians, he picked all the musicians who support him, patriotic Russian musicians. The rest of them are just like cast aside. It's like the old days with Stalin and Shostakovich, It's sort of like.
But is that, I mean, but why are artists always important for freedom and democracy? Do you know what I mean? Like, because if we go back, we had the hippies against Vietnam. We had, artists have always kind of been on the do you know what I mean? Is it because they have a voice to the public, or is it because
they're independent? Probably because they're independently minded and not so easy to control. So then you either have to leave or carry the state line, Stravinsky famously fell foul of the Soviet authorities, and he went to America, which was the greatest sin. So he was denounced by the Soviets, who, Stravinsky was like the greatest composer of his time, and everyone looked up to him. But you can't work where there is no freedom. So you have to be free. I mean, the thing is, you can't be a great state if you can't accept any criticism. So you have to accept criticism, be able to accept criticism individually and as collectively. So.
Yeah, but I feel with that, because I totally agree, but I feel that that's not only lost on Russia. I feel like, I feel over the last 2 to 3 years, there has been, I mean, we've gone through the whole COVID episode where there has been a lot of controversy around it, like a lot of, and for me, it has been a lot of times that you can't ask questions and you can't comment. I mean, I know one of your old friends, Eric Clapton, he was very vocal against vaccines, for example, and that instead of embracing the discussion and the dialogue, it was pushed back. And I feel that this is happening on a lot of topics, not just, I mean, obviously in Russia it's worse, maybe, or more visible right now. But what do you think about this?
Yeah, there is. And there's not only just like that, there's censorship if you say anything that's not politically correct. Because when I came to doing that book that I just put out, Talking to Myself, people went through it, and you can't say this, you can't say that. You can't basically express your opinion. Or if you do, you'll be held to task for it. Someone will say, no, that's not acceptable. You can't say that anymore. So you have to self-censor.
But did you do that in your book?
Well, I mean, it's sort of like, it's a lot of it is to do with words that you use, particularly concerning race, sexuality, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that it's a bit ridiculous, because historically, certain names, what it's like, words to describe people's color and ethnicity and everything, they change. So 10 years ago it was okay, and now it's not. So
you can say all those words on my podcast, Chris, just to be clear. We there's no cancelling or censorship here, but
saying that just sort of self-censorship. Yeah, so you are encouraged to self-censor. It is getting very tricky. So and you will be not allowed on public broadcasting. No, take that off. Don't. And that's what happened to Clapton, isn't it? And Van Morrison. I mean, their opinions. It's a tricky situation. I mean, you are in a tricky situation. That's why, like in an emergency situation, they do ask people to come together and for the common good. And I understand that. That's you do sort of have to come together for the common good. Sometimes bury your opinions. So.
But we just can't cross a line. I mean, it has to be. We still have to feel like that you can express your opinion even if it's unpopular, and then rather take the dialogue than to marginalize that person. That's because without that we might not progress with that particular matter, or I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of, well, the trouble is, as you know, there's a lot of fake news, and with the way, I mean, when I was writing as a journalist, occasionally you always had to check all your facts as much as possible before they're printed, before they're put into print. So you have to double check. You can't just say things if you haven't double checked that such and such is true. Might not be your opinion. I'm talking about facts.
Exactly.
Such and such happened on a certain date. Someone has to check all those things. But now with the internet and people just posting things, there isn't really any checking that goes on. It's just put up there. And once it's put up there, then it's repeated. And then people, well, it becomes, is it true or not? Or people just accept it as truth?
No, so it's very tricky because there is so much information flowing out there, like it's an endless stream, and it's really hard to dissect what is correct and what is wrong,
Yeah, and it's not, yeah. I mean, obviously, particularly regarding wartime, there's a lot of false information put out. I mean, in the Second World War, there was false information put out by the British. That was part of what you had to do, and if there was really bad news and a lot of ships were sunk, they didn't like to tell everybody because it was demoralizing. So there's always that sort of false information. But I mean, now there's people actually posting videos, young teenagers posting videos from Ukraine where bombing is happening, and they go out in the morning and they see what's been destroyed, and they're just showing what's there.
Which so they might expose some of the propaganda in a way, or
well, I mean, that's just that is just factual. So obviously they're not showing that in China or in Russia because I mean, if you can you can watch every news channel across the world. You can watch the BBC, Al Jazeera, you can watch any TV channel you want and make up your own mind. But if you can only watch Russia Today, then
That's
you can't make up your mind because you haven't got the choice to decide if you think such and such a thing is true. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, go on, carry on.
I was thinking because maybe what has just changed is that we actually have so many people on the ground who can actually prove wrong what is being said. Like you can't really, in some way, you can't stop the truth, but it's just because there are, like you said, there are teenagers on the street taking photos, and then, I don't know, Putin is saying something, and these teenagers can actually prove him wrong.
That's right. And also quite a lot of people in Russia have got relations in Ukraine. It's so close. It's not like it's Afghanistan or something, so anyway,
we won't solve this one.
Interesting for me writing the book because obviously I had to go through a lot of memories and things that happened that I can recall, and I had to try and remember them as best as I could, and then check quite a lot of things because you don't want to be putting out wrong information, because once you do put it out, you know, people will pick you up on it and say, oh, that's wrong, or, you know.
I read somewhere when you were talking about your book is called Talking to Myself, right?
Uh-huh.
And I read somewhere where you were saying that you felt it was important to document the family history somehow, that you took this on. Why was that important for you to kind of, because I mean your life is amazing actually, looking at it from the outside. I haven't lived it, so I don't know how it felt, but I looking at it from the outside, it's a very interesting journey that you had. And I'm thinking, what prompts you to kind of put it into written form?
I don't know, but I've just seen my computer's only 19%.
So what does that mean? So we have 5 more minutes.
No, I might have to get the recharge it. I might have to go and get the plug for it.
Okay. Should I pause it now?
Yeah, pause it now.
Okay. Are we plugged in?
Yeah, but that's not on. Hold on. Yeah,
so we were talking about what was it inside you that forced you or made you feel like you had to somehow document your family history in your life?
Well, I didn't have to. I wanted to.
Yeah, but what's the urge or desire?
Well, you know, I'm a bit of a historian. My father was a historian, really, and and then I had an uncle who told me lots of family stories, and I just think it's nice documenting family history, because you know, it's often can be a sort of common heritage for other people too. And obviously people are interested in my family because my brother is such a well-known figure that you know, then obviously my parents were quite influential in bringing us up, so that history becomes you know, explains quite a lot of things. I mean, I did pick up a book by an Irish author, and it was about the fathers of 3 well-known Irishmen: James Joyce, Oscar Wilde, and W.B. Yeats. And he did it. You know, there's a whole book about their fathers who were interesting characters in themselves, and helped explain how their sons became who they became. So I thought, well, I'm doing the same thing with my father, you know. So
and your parents were both teachers, right? Or
no, my mother wasn't a teacher. She was a housewife. No.
And how was that? You grow up in kind of a post-war UK, or England, that's to be exact. How was that? How is the atmosphere? And
well, you know, it was very safe where I grew up, pretty safe, and it was really you know, outside London, 16 miles outside London, and you know, it was fairly basic upbringing, but we were happy. Had lots of friends, played lots of sport, and had attention from parents. I mean, my father was working quite a lot. He was often out working, but you know, he gave us a lot of attention, so we were in no way deprived. Nobody was an alcoholic.
No.
It was pretty ordinary sort of childhood, if a bit sort of standard, not that exciting in some ways. But
standard English childhood.
Yeah, it was pretty standard for the time. I mean, there was rationing. When I had a ration book when I was a kid, so you know, sugar and stuff like that, and meat and butter, all that was still rationed in when I was young. That you know, but that was the case across Europe. You know, that was the same all across Europe. There was still, a wartime in the 19, I was born in the end of the 1940s, and in the 1950s, they came off rationing. There was the cinema was important. People used to go to the cinema. TV wasn't important. There wasn't much TV. There was some people had TV, but there wasn't many programs. Radio, wireless was important, and newspapers were important, and that's what going to the pub. That's what people did. It was fairly basic, and so the popular culture, since particularly the wartime, when there were a lot of Americans came over to Europe, then people got switched on to the American kind of culture with the records, first of all, kind of jazz records, swing bands like my parents. I mean, all that was really came with the Americans, initially. And then in the 1950s with rock and roll, with Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and all those guys. So that was the cultural thing that was happening that I kind of saw when I was quite young, because I was influenced quite a bit by my brother, who's 4.5 years older than I am, and so consequently, I saw things that. I was introduced to things that were a lot of friends of mine weren't introduced to. I was listening to sort of Muddy Waters when I was like 13 or something.
Yeah, I had the same luxury. I mean, my sister is not as famous as your brother, but she introduced me to a lot of because she's 4 years older, and I got through her a lot of music that my friends didn't even know about, and I am very grateful for it. But you said in some song, the coffee tasted like water. Is that an accurate description of how the times were back then?
Yeah, well, they just used to drink very weak instant coffee, didn't they? In fact, they used to drink ersatz coffee. It was chicory. That's what they used to drink. I don't think people bothered too much about it in those days. I mean, now everyone wants everything to be authentic
and special. Yeah,
I don't think people bothered about being that authentic. But then, although when it came to sort of music, that was also a factor, wasn't it? Because people wanted the authentic, the real thing. And I mean, rock and roll has sort of happened, like Chuck Berry, and that happened a little earlier in the 1950s in America. And it didn't really come over to Europe for some years later. We were that much behind. Certainly a lot of the artists never came over. But, I got to see a lot of great music in the early 1960s. I saw people like Little Richard when he toured, the Everly Brothers when he toured with the Stones. Those were the early guys. Who else was on it? With Tina Turner. I got to see Ike and Tina. Ike and Tina Turner. That must be 1966 or something.
Yeah, and Jimi Hendrix, I think you mentioned somewhere that.
Yeah, but this was even before Hendrix. Then Hendrix. That was a kind of next wave. So yeah, then Jimi Hendrix, and of course, I'd seen all the British blues bands that we used to go and see, like the Yardbirds and the Pretty Things, and loads of, Pink Floyd, early Pink Floyd and all that. So I was kind of in a unique situation where, I mean, which is one reason you say about the book, to put it all down, because I sort of saw all that. Yeah. Not many people were in such a unique situation as I was.
Yeah, you're close to it as well. Yeah.
Not only going to see people playing, but also meeting them.
Someone wants to go for a walk, I can hear.
No, he wants me to play with a ball. So I actually got to meet them too. So that was quite a unique situation that not many people were in. And I was just young. I was 16, 17 years old. I was a kid, really. I mean, I wouldn't normally have met those people being so young. only because I was around and I took the opportunity.
But how come there is music? How does, because where does the music in the family come from? Do you know what I mean? Was there anything, you mentioned that your parents had these
Not
records?
really. I think it's just. I think when people heard, I mean, I've heard this from a few people. I heard it from Robert Plant the other day. They heard the stuff and then they just wanted to be a part of it for some reason or another. And only a few actually it worked out for a few. The rest of them it didn't work out for.
Yeah. We only see the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. So, well, you should know about that.
Yeah.
So, of course, there were some people who were quite gifted, and some people were very gifted musicians, and some people had to work very hard at it. So sometimes the people who worked hard at it are the ones that stayed longer and achieved what they wanted to do up to a point. But of course, I know an awful lot of musicians, a bit like me, who've carried on playing music down the ages, and you know, they've really made very little money out of playing music. It's been something that they've happy to do and they wanted to do, but financially speaking, it's been a disaster. You know, because if you want to bring up a family and stuff, it's very vicarious. You know, where's your next money going to come from? So it's a tricky business being a musician. A few people have made a lot of money. It's like a horse race, you know.
Yeah, it can only be one winner or two. Yeah,
only one winner, and the rest you don't even remember. You don't know who they were. But they had to be there. They were in the race, but you know, there wouldn't have been a race without them.
No, that's true. But I'm interested because I remember when I was a teenager. I'm born in the early 80s, and I had a band when I was like 15, 16, and I mean, my parents were not really against it, but it was always very obvious to me that this was not going to be my future somehow. That you know, nobody in the family saw that, yeah, Almar can become a musician, and they were probably right. But how was that back in those days? That, you know, was because there wasn't thousands of musicians and YouTube and all these tools that you can have to promote yourself. Was there a support, like when you and your brother said, yeah, we want to play music? Were your parents like, yeah, go ahead?
No, not really. I mean, my brother supported himself. He had a grant because he was at university. So in a kind of way, he didn't have to get a job because he was a student. And even Keith went to an art school, which meant that he didn't have to get a job either. Brian Jones had a job. I remember I remember him working. I think Bill Wyman worked, and so did Charlie. Charlie was a graphic designer. But then comes the really problem point where you start getting gigs and you want to be successful. So you have to either decide you are going to give up your job and become a musician. Now stop it. You're either going to give up your job and become a musician, or you're going to say to the band, I'm sorry, I can only do it part-time. Which means, you know, you can do weekend gigs, and that's that sort of thing. But there are a lot of people that you know, I mean, a cousin of mine, what did they say? He was my cousin. He's called Dick Taylor, who played with the Pretty Things. Yeah. And he played bass in the early Rolling Stones. And I think his wife, he gave up music altogether. His wife sort of insisted he gave it up. He went back to it. There were people like that, and then of course, as I describe in my book, you end up doing a lot of different things. You know, driving the taxi, painting people's walls, you know, being an actor. You know,
yeah, I like two of your movies specifically. There is the one called the Stud, and then the other one, what was called The Bitch. This was like
Red-
a sequel and a prequel, right?
Yeah,
You
my
played
memory.
rockstars. You played rockstars in both of those movies yourself, I think, or something like that.
It was a fleeting appearance. I mean, I really did theatre. In theatre, I did theatre. You know, I was in quite a lot of plays. That was more serious. The stuff on TV, I did a few TV things, and that they were largely just jokes. Unless you get a good role, you're just, you know. But I did do some quite good plays in the theatre, but of course they don't stand up because nobody sees them once they finish.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, you know, you do the show and then you finish the show, and then where's your next paycheck coming from? It's not like every month that you get money paid in your account. So it's
but
you know,
but the parents, were they like, I don't know, like, so you say your brother had a grant from, so they didn't have to worry about his income.
but
But
no,
like,
parents want because parents want you to get a straight job.
yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
when people come and say, my son wants to be an actor, what would you suggest? I say, you beat it out of him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I guess, I mean, this is what put me through law school in the end. That was I knew that if I didn't do something like that, they would kick me out of the home. So I'm in some way thankful for it, but on the other hand, I hate being a lawyer.
I think one famous one I know, because I met the band and they were always favorites of mine. And Garth Hudson, who was obviously a very brilliant musician, the keyboard player with the band. And he was very worried about what his parents would say when he joined that. They weren't called the band then, they backed Ronnie Hawkins, didn't they? They were backing band for Ronnie Hawkins. And he said that he was their music teacher. So they kind of accepted that he was the music teacher for the rest of the guys. And in a way he was. But yeah, there's no parents that, unless they're very enlightened or that, I mean, that's one reason why now you see mostly with actors and people in film, the only ones that are around are the people who've got rich parents, because the rich parents can afford to put them through acting school, then they can try and make it for a few years, they'll support them, look after them. If you're working class and got no money, it's very difficult to get a grant, you have to repay it, and then so you've got a situation now, most all actors and probably to some extent musicians are people with money. Or parents got money.
But at the same time with music, what has happened now is that it's easier to make, or, you know, like we have more technology. I mean, you are recording at home, for example. I know you record at home.
Yeah.
This would have been a massive issue, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, or a much bigger investment, let's say, right?
There's more understanding now of what people want to do and what children want to do and what makes them happy. And parents generally, if their children are happy and that's what they want to do, they should support them and encourage them. But up to a point. But my record that I did, the Mixing Up the Medicine, that was actually recorded in a studio before lockdown, because you can kind of hear us all playing together. And definitely not done in a home studio. A home studio is really, for me, is boring. It's really, I mean, you can develop ideas, but if you want to play with other people, it's good to be together and playing live. And seeing I don't really much use, drum machines and stuff, I prefer using real musicians, because one of the jobs of somebody like me that writes songs and composes things is you'd have to try and keep musicians in work. So either playing gigs or recording or whatever else you can do, because there are a lot of very good musicians out there and they need songs to play and they need gigs to play, and that's all organization and contacts and reputations and names and, you know, leading a band and all that stuff. And that's really quite a crucial thing. I mean, you know, there's a whole entertainment industry, but unfortunately, as you well know, it's been decimated. First of all, we had this ghastly thing called Brexit, that run by these dreadful people over here and across Europe that, you know, and then we've had the COVID, you know, so the whole industry, music industry, entertainment industry, party industry, you know, restaurant, everything has been absolutely decimated, you know, by this epidemic and also by this fucking Brexit thing, you know, that we've had. So it's you know, I feel sorry for people who want to try to make a living of it, because, you know, increasingly being a musician, that you've work has become is quite diverse. So it's very hard to make money out of recording anymore. You used to sell records and make something. Now you can't really make anything. So then you make money playing live gigs. But then playing live gigs, there's so many people will play for almost nothing. It's quite hard to play live gigs and make money. But then people still want to have parties or their anniversary, or they want to have a Christmas do. And, you know, they want to throw a party, either people with money or sometimes, you know, people get together, subscribe. And that has been saved quite a lot of, you know, it's helped quite a lot, because
there's that aircraft again, Chris. There's that airplane again.
Oh yeah, it's a little one. It's a little mini plane. You know, because you know, quite a lot of work that I've done across Europe, you know, in Switzerland and Germany and places, are people that they really love music, and they look around and they see the music they like is not being put on in their vicinity. They may live in a little town. You know, I'm not talking about people that live in Berlin, but people that live in a little town. They like living in that town. They're happy living in that town, but there's no music. So they get together, a bunch of them, and they say, well, I know we can use this venue. Let's do a gig once a month. So they put their money together, they organize it, you know, they don't make money out of it. Then they invite bands like myself and other people along, and we play in their town. And this is fulfilling people's cultural needs. All their friends, they get together, they have something to eat, they have a drink, they have a dance. And, you know, this is partly the function of music. It does bring people together, and people enjoy themselves and have a good time. So it's not really even commercial, but obviously it has to pay. They have to put you in a hotel, they have to feed you. And so a lot of where I'm working on, the level I'm working at has been like that. Is that I go to the people's towns. You know, they don't go to the big cities. If you want to see a Rolling Stones concert, you've got to go to Paris or something.
Yeah, I'm going in Stockholm. Yeah,
they're not going to go to your little village, but I go to the little village.
Yeah,
that's my function, and all that has been happening across Europe culturally for quite a long time, and it's been a very plus thing. And no one from the EU, or very few people, said what a positive thing this was, and how it brings people together, brings down barriers, and we make friends. And it's not really to do particularly with making money. It's not really a business. It works.
It pays the bills. Yeah,
it pays a little bit of the bills. But, you know, this is what people like Putin don't want. They don't want people like me coming to Ukraine, playing music, and them all having a good time and, you know, being, you know, looking towards, of course, they look to London, you know, why you come from London to play music? Great, we'll go and see it. You know, they want to be part of, they want to be part of the whole movement. This is what partly brought the Berlin Wall down, and, you know, years back, the youth, they wanted to have Levi jeans and eat hamburgers and listen to rock and roll records. You know, they weren't really, it wasn't a political, they didn't have high moral ideas. They just wanted to be part of a bigger, more freer, happier group. And this is the function of music and entertainment, that people you know, join together and share their happiness. And this is where political people who want to control, you know, control areas, they don't like it, whether it's in China or Russia or, you know, Vietnam or in a lot of places, you know.
But like,
Yeah.
in your case, like you've done almost, I mean, you've been in theater, you've been in movies, you wrote a book, you've done music, you have traveled, you have driven a taxi. I mean, I don't think I know or have seen anyone who has done as many different, you've composed music for others. Is there, why is this, why all this? Why is that to satisfy some need in you, or you just didn't want to be one thing? You didn't want to bet on one horse somehow, or
well, no, a lot of, I mean, no, a lot. I mean, I didn't drive a taxi because I wanted to. I just did it to make some money. So there's some things you have to do to make some money. I mean, I would write articles for newspapers partly to make money, but then I started writing about music. And then I branched out and wrote about other things that interested me. But sometimes you do it because it's a challenge. But they're fairly complementary because theatre, you're appearing on stage, aren't you? So, I mean, I learned a lot from being in the theatre about performing, obviously. Because, I mean, you're in a play is scripted. You come on, you know, you deliver your lines, you interact, you leave stage. That's all scripted. You're sort of interpreting the writer's ideas and the director's ideas for the audience, but you're separate from the audience. You don't even acknowledge the audience. In theatre, you never go to the front and say, hello, how are you doing tonight? You know, that's a complete no-no, right? You're on stage, so you're on stage. So that, for me, that was a great experience, because then when I came to play music, wait, I'm on stage, okay? So you understand the mechanics of being on stage and what's involved and how you should, you know, that's what people talk about their craft. And so over a period of years, I have developed a kind of on stage, you know, how I feel about it and how I perform. So I think that's complementary. And then when you come to writing, of course, you write lyrics. I began just writing lyrics and a little bit of music, but I wasn't really that very, didn't have much of the musical education, but I couldn't really play musical instrument that well. So I started writing lyrics, same as my brother did, because lyrics come from writing poems. You read poems, you write lyrics, maybe they scan, it's the way they sound. In the sound is the music. So that's intrinsic, that's part of it. So then you tell a story. So you're telling a story. So, you know, you develop that. So songwriting is developing quite a lot of different little arts. Art of the melody, the art of the poetry, the art of the scansion, and then you're performing it. So therefore you're performing your own little works, aren't you? You know what I mean? The singer gets up, he's written his song, he's put it in the music, and he's playing it for you. There's a whole package in it. You've got the whole thing, you know, which is different from someone just coming to singing someone else's song, interpret someone else's song, because that's unique. So that's a performance, and that's writing. And writing prose or writing for a newspaper, or, you know, I came to writing my book, well, that's writing too. Is a different kind of writing. But when I was writing my book, I thought, well, I could put some lyrics in, I could put a recipe in, I could put in what I want, because it's my book, right? So you're kind of experimenting a bit and having fun with it, because I think when you have fun and you enjoy it, then it becomes interesting for other people, because you can't write something to say, oh, other people are going to like this, that you don't want to do that. You say, no, I like this. Now I hope other people will like it, but if they don't like it, I still like it. So yeah, but I'm okay with it.
This is a really interesting point, Chris, because lately I've been listening to your music, and I also was watching some of your videos on YouTube, and what really stuck with me about your music is that you are actually doing the music that you like. And it somehow it just came to me that I don't feel that you're trying to make something that you think others like. I have a feeling that you make the music that comes naturally to you and you like it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I can only really do the stuff. I mean, I can't really do modern. My problem is that radio won't play my tracks because they're not modern enough for them. They're too old-fashioned. But I can't really do modern music. You know, if I was to do a track with rap in the middle of it and, you know, a lot of samples and stuff like that, I can't do that. I mean, my brother does sort of stuff like that. He's much more up to date than I am. I'm not. I don't even pretend to try to be up to date. But then the problem I've got is that they won't play that kind of music on the radio because they think, no, it's old-fashioned. But that's in UK. In America, they don't have a problem with that at all because they have a cultural. This is their culture. And they're used to it. And so if you play something and it reminds them of something that perhaps Bing Crosby would have sung, that's okay. They're fine with it, you know, because he's an icon, you know, or Frank Sinatra. You know, these guys, like, they will still, I mean, I listen to Frank Sinatra, you know, whatever. I don't care what era they came from. If I like it, I like it. I mean, there's a song I occasionally play, which is called Blue Skies. I mean, it was written in the 1920s by, and it was in the Jazz Singer. It was written by Irving Berlin. And it's a good song. It's a good song today. You know, it's an old song, but it's still a good song. So I don't see that, you know, that doesn't particularly worry me. In fact, I quite like old things. I like old books. When I find a poetry book and it's 200 years old, and you open it and this guy's written these poems and you read it and it's good. And you think, wow, I'm reading something that someone wrote 200 years ago.
That's crazy.
I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah.
So it's the test of time. Things can stand the test of time.
But do you have like because with the music, like I feel that your last album versus some of the previous stuff, how many albums do you have out actually?
I don't know, but I worked out before this album that I recorded and published over 100 songs.
So that would be like 8 to 10 albums in total.
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing compared to Paul McCartney or Simon or something. But you know, it's a few records and it goes back to the 70s. So you know, when I go out to play, there's a lot of possibilities of stuff I can play. Depends what I feel like and what my situation is. So it's a bit tricky for the people I play with because sometimes I think, it's like Bob Dylan does that. I think he just, if you play with Bob Dylan, you're expected to know about 400 songs.
Yeah.
You might play any one of them at any point, you know.
And he has done, he's done tours where he plays songs where I think a lot of the audience came to see something else, you know, or expected something else. He seems to kind of play according to the mood that he's in.
Yeah, well, he's a one-off. I saw him. I played in the Montreal Jazz Festival some years ago, and we went to see Dylan in a small theater. Well, you know, not that small, but it was quite a small theater. And I was with Charlie Hart, that I wrote all my stuff with, a lot of my songs. And it wasn't until the very last song, which might have been like a Rolling Stone, that Charlie said that's the first time I heard one line of what he was singing.
Yeah. But yeah, but on your music, what I wanted to say is that I feel that the last album is a little bit different from the previous material in a way that I felt that was a little bit more bluesy, and then the new one is a little bit more kind of swing, folkish a little bit more. Was that a conscious thing, or is it just that's how you felt?
Quite, yeah. Well, I think if you don't make an album, the gap between the albums, I think perhaps if you make albums regularly, but I mean, people are always looking for something a bit new, a bit of a challenge. Otherwise, if you just repeat what you've already done, it gets a bit, you get a bit boring. I have done some more jazzy things. It's just that what happened was that I had this title, Talking to Myself, for the book. So then I said, I'm going to do a song called Talking to Myself. So then it came out like a sort of Mose Allison jazz trio thing, like stream of consciousness thing. So I did that with Charlie. And then I said, well, we do a couple more like that. But you can't have just one song like that. And then there were a couple of bluesy things. And then it's less folky, yeah, it's a bit more jazzy. And then we put a band together to play it, and they were like session musicians, really. So I mean, I think it links together okay. It can be difficult if you've got a lot of different songs that are very different style, and then you've got to try and put them together as an album. But then nobody buys records as albums anymore. They just download a track. So it almost the album thing doesn't seem to exist anymore, which is a shame, because in the old days people had, album gave you a kind of identity with time and space, not just one song, but a few songs that you could that could be played on the radio, or you could play at gigs. So I still think in those terms, but really people now just they do one song at a time, don't they? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because actually the reason why we are talking here is through this mutual friend that we have here in Prague who played with you on those gigs that you just did here, and he sells used vinyls, and I started, out of a boredom during COVID, and I started collecting vinyls again and playing them at home. And what was interesting is that, first of all, there was a lot of songs by bands that I had always liked that I kind of rediscovered, and I found stuff in their catalog that I hadn't heard because it was all digital. I was skipping songs. I was listening just to a playlist or whatever. So you missed some of actually some of the stuff that you learned to appreciate again. And what I also noticed with albums is that, or when the vinyl was, is that you kind of had to make the album with an atmosphere in mind. You kind of wanted to start off with something that hooked people in, and then you wanted maybe on side A, the last song had to be a slower one, and then you would start side B with something. It was the whole package. Now you can just slam, one or two or 50 songs onto something, and people just skip and forward and whatever. It's such a different era.
Yeah, and people used to, the classic thing was you had a B-side, didn't you, in the old days? The B-side was sort of throwaway, but then sometimes the B-side was better than the A-side, because it's all subjective, isn't it? You think, oh, that's really good, and then you listen to something 5 years later and you think, well, actually I prefer the other. I find that with photographs. If someone does a photographic session and you look at all the pictures and you say, well, I like that one, I like that one, and then the rest of them you don't look at, and then you look at them a couple of years later and you see, actually I really much prefer the other pictures. Your appreciation, it's sort of it can change, and you can look at this. It's all subjective. But I was going to say, the thing with Spotify and what people use now is that they say, okay, you can listen to anything you want to listen to, right? What do you want to listen to? Right. So you have to then actually choose what it is. It's not like you pull out a record and you put on the B-side and you, like you say, you can't even remember what was on there. And you like the band or you like the singer or something about it, and then surprise me. I mean, that's the art of the DJ. We used to be, the art of the DJ was finding tracks that people didn't that weren't that obvious,
Mm.
And in fact, what in the old days when blues bands used to come along, and they used to do covers, and the Rolling Stones were one of those blues bands doing covers. And the trick was not, you had to do a cover, but make it like your own. So that meant you couldn't really do, if you did, let's say, Johnny Be Good, that wouldn't be very original, because like every other band would do Johnny Be Good. So then if you did a Chuck Berry song, you had to do a Chuck Berry song that wasn't so obvious, that you could make your own by the way you presented it and arranged it. Then it became your own. People they didn't even know it was Chuck Berry. They identified it with you. So in your set, you'd have that Chuck Berry song like that. You'd have a Jimmy Reed song that perhaps there wasn't anything, other blues guys. So you do these covers of songs that were not the biggest songs, the best-selling songs that they ever had. And that was the art of putting your set together and building your fan base. And introducing people to music, otherwise you're just a covers band.
Yeah.
Not everyone can write all their own material, and a lot of people don't write their own material, but that's okay. But then they have to be very careful about what they choose, and that is another art in itself, about what you choose to play. Because not everyone can be, some people are just great singers. Who cares? Whitney Houston was a great singer. She didn't write songs, but she interpreted other people's songs. But that's great.
I see, but this was more common, though. I mean, we don't have the. I mean, I remember now when the Beatles did this. They did a lot of cover songs in the beginning, and then the Stones did it. Deep Purple did, like, the first 3 Deep Purple albums are almost half of them are cover songs. And they it was like you say, they made the cover theirs. But this is kind of gone. It's not, doesn't seem to be very common, or actually, yeah, I don't remember hearing a great cover lately.
No, but once you forget about it, then it's you people are free to make the cover song, aren't they? Because like that. What was that Dylan song of, like, knocking on heaven's door or something? Or people just were sampling all those things. People sample now, so you don't really, in a way, a sample is a cover, isn't it? That's what's been going on over the last 20 years, a lot more. Where in the old days, people you just used to nick the riff, play it yourself. There's only so many riffs. There's only so many guitar riffs in existence. I had a Ike Turner record. I had an LP, and half of one side was Ike Turner playing all the different blues riffs and styles. Because that's what he did. That was a session guy. So he would go da da dun da dun ba bum ba bum da dun da dun, then da 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 dun da dun da dun. With blues bands, there's like about 10 different kind of time sequences and stuff, and they're all a combination of one or the other of that. So more or less, And I could just covered them all in one track. Because there was no words. It was just instrumental. I don't know what it was called. Anyway, is there anything else?
Yeah. You're an endless. You're endless. Yeah, you're an endless lake. No, I just you did a lot of travel. You went to India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Israel. Why? What was that?
Well, I like traveling.
Yeah, and you went there as a tourist, or you went there, I don't know, to rediscover yourself, or to find God, or was there a purpose?
Well, I started traveling when my dad used to go on trips and traveling and camping, and we traveled across Europe, France, Spain when we were kids. And I just loved the sort of freedom of it, new places, different food, language, scenery. It was just wonderful. I just take it all in. So I got pretty hooked on, that opened my eyes. So then when I was able to go and take a trip, the first trip I took, I was at school, and I hitchhiked to Greece. There were 3 of us. We left England, and then we went our separate ways. And we said,
wait, you hitchhiked to Greece?
we hitchhiked to Greece.
Okay.
And we got the boat. We got the boat from Dover to Ostend in Belgium. And we said, well, we can't, 3 guys, we can't hitch together, so we'll split up. So where should we meet? So we said, well, where place we all know. So we said, we'll meet outside the Parthenon between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning, right? Not knowing what would happen.
No mobile phones?
Well, we didn't have any. No, we just said, when we get there, we'll meet outside the Parthenon. So I got there first. It took me 10 days to hitchhike to Greece, as it happened. And I got there and I went up the Parthenon, which, if you know, climbing up the Acropolis, it was the summer and it was very hot, and and I had to pay money to go in the Acropolis, and I didn't have any money. I mean, the whole trip cost me 50 quid, and I was away about 4 weeks. So then there was no one there, and then I went up the next morning. I think there was no one there the next morning. Then the third morning, I said, well, if I go up there today and there's no one there, I'm not going to do it again. And my school friend was there. The third friend didn't make it. He got waylaid in Yugoslavia when he met some American GIs. So we didn't see him until we got back. So that was then we went across to Crete and we had a great time. And so that was my first taste of independence. And then when I was 20, I did the same thing. I just took off and went to India. I got on a train, went to Greece, then I hitchhiked all across Asia. It took 6 months to get to India.
6 months?
Yeah, because I wasn't in a hurry. I was some weeks in Greece, and then we went around Afghanistan a bit. We went to the north of Pakistan. We went to Kashmir. Then I got to India, and we went to Nepal, went to Kathmandu. I was in Kathmandu. And then I was about a year in India. And then I did study a little bit of singing in India because I loved Indian music. So that's one reason I went to India, was the music and the culture, and to find out about things. So that was my only kind of formal study in music, has been Indian singing, which I took some lessons with the local teacher in the mountain village where I was staying in Almora. And that grounded me, and it proved absolutely very useful, because I learned how to sing in tune and how to breathe, and it taught me scales, and so without that I really couldn't have had a career really in singing. That's the most useful thing, and I like that, because I didn't really like the way they taught Western music. It was all classical music at school, and I didn't like that. And so I didn't have anything to do with that, really. I didn't really have any kind of music education. That's the only kind of musical education I had.
But do you think that is good or bad? Do you think musical education could have limited you?
Well, that's what Jimmy Page used to say. What he liked about the guitar is that they didn't teach it in school. So there wasn't anyone to show you how it should go. So you had to work it all out by yourself. And of course, in those days, there was no internet or anything. You had to hear something on a record and then figure out what the hell they were doing, which might have been tricky if they had different kind of tuning or something like that. So, luckily I had that Indian singing education, even though it wasn't that long, only some months. But of course, in Indian music, they do have quarter notes, and they have these shrutis. So in a way, it's a little bit like the blues. They're singing, flattened notes. So once you can hear and attune to that, then you can have an appreciation of it open. There's similarity to that to blues singing, African singing too. So that was my one education. And then when I realized, when I wrote the book, I really had no formal education at all, very, very little. in either, I mean, I went to school and I left school when I was 18, but after that, I had no really proper, in drama, I had a little bit, but not much. So I sort of had to learn, I learned an awful lot of friends. And so I always say to my children, my grandchildren, try and find friends that are much cleverer than you are, because you can learn stuff off. You can learn so much off your friends if they're bright and clever and intelligent. They can tell you stuff. And I learned a lot of, in India particularly, when I traveled with some quite clever people. So they educated me in literature, events, world things, and I put all that in the book. So have you read the book?
No, I need to order it on Amazon.
Hope you can understand it.
Yeah, but it actually, I read some reviews about it, and I read some chapter from it, and it's actually, people like it very much, and
yeah, good.
I definitely want to pick it up.
I've got to go and get a drink. I'm terribly thirsty talking.
Yeah, so let me pause. I think we have just like 10 minutes left.
All right, let me go and get a drink.
Yeah.
I must go for a walk soon because it's still a nice day and the dogs want to go.
Yeah, I just wanted, you were talking about education, and I think like it's like looking at what I've looked up on you, then you're very much educated in life somehow, and I think it's an interesting journey you've had so far. You've seen so many different things. You lived so much different times. You know, post Second World War, you lived the hippie times, you lived the Cold War, you know, the ozone layer, the acid rain. I mean, there's been endless things that are supposed to both start and end our lives during this time. And then through your brother and his journey, you have also been very close to, I guess, as you mentioned, you met a lot of those people that, like those, let's say, rock stars and pop stars of previous and modern times. And you said somewhere, I think, that people have the impression that that happiness can be bought, and that, but you, for me, like you, as you mentioned earlier, you drove a taxi to make money, but you're still a happy guy.
Yeah, well, you get a few stories. You get a few stories to write about if you do that sort of stuff. I mean, you get into some funny situations. I mean, that's particularly what happened to me. Kind of like, do you watch Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Are you a Seinfeld fan?
Not a big fan, but I've watched him. Yeah.
There's one in which they go, worlds collide, and he's got this girlfriend, and then they don't know someone else, and then behind George's back they connect, and he goes, no, worlds collide, we can't have that. So I was in a situation where like worlds collided. So on the one hand, you'd sort of like, I remember going for an audition for a play or a film or something, and you were at the same time there was a guy that I worked for that used to go decorate people's houses. So you'd be decorating this house, and then you'd have to go to this audition. So the two worlds shouldn't collide. So you've got to scrub all this paint off the back of your hand, so you've got splattering white emulsion paint on the back of your hand. And, you don't want to go to an audition with fucking paint on your hand, because they say, and what have you been doing lately? You see? Yeah. So you can't say, I've been painting someone's house. They're not interested in it, because they're not really interested in real life. You basically have to lie. Oh, well, I've been, playing tennis or whatever. Like these people in Los Angeles, they go and do classes and play tennis. It's not the real world at all. It's just this kind of pretend world. So you kind of got this situation with worlds colliding. And I mean, there's one thing I talk about in the book, which is I'm doing the Christmas post, which was like I used to make money at Christmas by doing. They just took on extra because there was so much post at Christmas, so you get work at the post office, you know. And in the middle of a Christmas post, I had to go for an audition for the version of Tommy in the West End where Pete Townsend was, you know. So one minute I'm working picking up mail, and the next minute I'm in front of Pete Townsend singing a song. You know, it's fucking nuts.
Worlds are colliding.
Worlds collide. You can't really treat it seriously. You know, so it's just mad. And I just found myself in those sort of positions. So I was kind of straddling these kind of different worlds. So I mean, that's just because of what happened. I can't explain why it happened and all that. So you're kind of surfing this kind of thing. So what you get out of it is you get these kind of mad stories out of it, you know. So if you were like a writer, you know, perhaps I could have been a writer a little bit earlier. That's what I've been thinking, and I would have quite liked to be a writer, but that's what writers do. They write about shit that happens, and they can't almost make it happen. But there is situations like this. There's a Bukowski novel where he's writing this screenplay for someone in Los Angeles. Charles Bukowski was a famous kind of beatnik writer, and then he just goes to the racetrack every day and bets. He doesn't give a shit about the money or the film or anything, because they give him $10,000, so he just rents a house and he has beer in the fridge, and that's all he cares about. He doesn't think beyond that, and he goes to the racetrack, and then the guy says, "No, this needs rewriting," and he rewrites it, and he goes on the film set and he's just rude to everybody. He just doesn't give a shit, but he kind of creates the stories out of what he's going through in his own life. So I got in that sort of situation that sort of happened to me. So I was kind of, one minute I was in regular world with people, working class people going to the pub and doing their jobs. And the next minute you're sitting with Rod Stewart, you know, in the studio with their recording. It's sort of like, didn't really make sense. It was actually quite hard.
I think it's really interesting because you play, as you say, you're straddling two different worlds. One foot in the real world and one foot. I mean, you know, you recorded with Clapton, with David Gilmour. I mean, you did lyrics for the Stones. I mean, you know what I mean? Like it, and then as you say, then you drive a taxi. It's such a cool thing that you have managed to live both worlds.
That happens to quite a lot of people. And there's a guy going back to Seinfeld. He's the soup Nazi. No soup for you. And do you know this? It's a famous Seinfeld episode.
No, I don't know
that. And so they had to go to this soup place, but if anyone said anything the guy didn't like, he said, "No soup for you." He was the soup Nazi. Right, it is very funny scene. This guy became really famous for this scene in the Seinfeld, but he had a regular job working somewhere, and like people would try and get him to say "no soup for you"
because they have seen him on the show. You mean like in real life?
They've seen him. He was a sort of part-time actor that they chose. But he never really made it as an actor, so he was doing jobs. But he became super famous for being on the Seinfeld thing, and they even asked him back. It's a famous scene, the soup, no soup for you. He's the soup Nazi.
But is that something that you have experienced? This, I mean, do you?
Yeah, sort of like it's a bit like that, you know. Or you know, there's some people, you know, like one-hit wonders in music. You know, they get one hit, and then the rest of their career, they really try to get another hit. But whatever they do, they can never get another hit. So they're known for the one hit, you know. But that's not a bad thing.
But that's addictive. I guess the adrenaline that comes from fame, it becomes addictive in a way. Don't you think so? I mean, if you have
what I tell you what is tricky is people who achieve fame, they have a hit, or the band is really popular, and then it doesn't go so well. So they got some of the success, they got some money, and they may not have had the money because they may not have really made the money, but they've had fame briefly shone in front of them. So what are they going to do? They can't go back to playing at the pub or doing the little circuit again because they're too big for that. So they kind of, they can't, eventually they do have to go back, call up all their old mates and say, well, what are you doing? I'll come and play in the pub with you. That's really hard for sort of brief success. So, all that stuff, you've got to keep your head screwed on, and take it as it comes, and if it doesn't come, what are you doing it for? I mean, I always say, look, I've done some stuff with kids doing music. Playing music is great because it's enjoyable. You get to play with your friends. You meet a lot of people. You can give people a lot of pleasure, and do it because of that. Don't do it because you really want to make money. If you do it because you want to make a lot of money out of it, you probably could go wrong, and that you won't be happy. But it's like playing football. If you love playing football with your mates, you still want to go play football with your mates. You're not a famous footballer, but you still love playing football with your mates. It's like that with music, So those simple pleasures are always going to be there if you can do them, and they're long lasting. So once you learn those skills, if you learn how to play tennis, and you practice and that, and you're not a bad tennis player, you go meet people, oh, come and play tennis with us, and then you can have an enjoyable afternoon playing tennis and have a drink. You meet people, blah, blah, blah. If you never play tennis, you're not in the game, are you? So playing music is a bit like that. You get to sing with other people. You get to, meet other people. You don't have to be super professional. What I like about folk music, what I like about pop music is you don't even have to be that good. You just have to love doing it and enjoy it and bring something to the table. But even if you just bring your enthusiasm, it goes a long way. So,
but in your case, like, because I think I feel like you live it like this, you take it like this, you take it for the ride, and you kind of go where it takes you, and not necessarily with a pre-decided goal or end goal or something like that. But do people have like any misconceptions about you because now you're Mick Jagger's brother, and then they expect you to be in a certain way, or to sing in a certain way, or to want to be in a certain way?
Yeah, because the newspapers, they put, oh, you only play to 100 people and your brother plays to 50,000 people. So they try and make out that you're nothing. What's
in it for to report it in that way? What's the motive there?
Sell newspapers because people don't have anything else to say. They don't. I mean, if they actually listened to the songs and said, well, I listened to the songs and all that, and I didn't like them, that would be better. Fair enough.
Yeah.
That'd be fair enough. But they're just doing it on numbers. And you say, yeah, well, the Sun newspaper sells a lot of newspapers, but it's still a pile of shit. So what, Or anyway, so what? I mean, jazz music doesn't sell that many records, and pop music does, but it doesn't mean to say jazz music is invalid because it's not so successful. It's different, and that's the way things are. There you go.
Yeah, but
look at people like look at Vincent van Gogh. During his lifetime, he didn't have 2 pennies to rub together.
Yeah.
And so then years after his death, he could have been a multi-billionaire. But
yeah, exactly. That seems to be the case with all these painters. We all glorify them after they're gone, because I guess then we run out of stuff coming from them.
Well, no, but I think what it often means is people don't they can't make their own decisions about what they like or not. They have to be told by someone else. If you're told by someone else that Van Gogh is a great painter, then you're taken on. But if someone just came to you with a Van Gogh painting and you've never seen it before, you might not think it was that good because no one had told you it's good. So
that's true.
this is, you know, that's the role of the critic or the person that brings it to your attention. But anyway, is that
yeah, I think we're good. I just wanted to, so what's coming up now? So first of all, guys that are listening, so go and check out Talking to Myself. That's Chris' book. That's on Amazon, and I guess on all the Audible and audiobook services. And then it's chrisjagger.com.
chrisjaggeronline.com, or or see my Instagram or whatever, and
Facebook and all that.
The album is called Mixing Up the Medicine.
Yes.
Do you have a copy of it? Shall I show you it?
Yeah, bring it. We'll wait for Chris to bring his copy of the album. Guys, check his stuff out. It's really cool, and you can also find it on YouTube and Spotify. He has a Facebook page, and and then the show. You can follow my show on the Blah Blah Bunker on Facebook, and there is an Instagram account as well. And it's available on Spotify, Apple, and all of this stuff. And here we are with the I like this cover.
Yeah, that's Mixing Up the Medicine.
Yeah,
that's my first record. That's when I was good looking.
Yeah, you're really young there. You're like 20 something, right? That's great.
That was my first record. So there you go. Vinyl. That's the first record I've had vinyl. The second record was vinyl, but that's since then. And that was on Asylum Records.
Okay.
David Geffen.
Yeah. He did a few big ones as well. I remember he did.
Yeah, I'll tell you who was on that label when I was with it was Jackson Brown.
Okay. Chris, it's been a pleasure having you.
Road trying to loosen my load. I got 7 women on my mind. You know that one.
Yeah. Chris, it's been a pleasure having you. It's and let me know when you get back to Prague so I can come and see you play. And
what does an Icelandic man do in Prague?
I do podcasts, and I have a small business here, and then I ride motorbikes, I run, I buy vinyl records, I read books, and
I met someone from she came to interview me somewhere from Icelandic TV. A short while back. Yeah, I've never been to Iceland, so I must go.
Yeah, let me know when you're there. I'll take you around. You have an open invitation.
How often do you go there?
I don't know, like 3-4 times a year. I mean, it was less during COVID, but still, I try to go like 3-4 times a year.
Well, here comes my wife. She was born in a place called Arendal.
In Norway, or? In
Norway.
I have relatives in Norway as well. And you've been married for 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah, she was born in the south of Norway.
So hun er norsk. You don't speak any Norwegian, Chris?
No, neither does she, because she came here when she was just a child, very young.
Okay. But it's been a great pleasure having you. We could have gone on much longer, but I don't want to take time from your talk or you to walk out in the nature.
That's right. Tack så mycket.
Yeah, tack så mycket. Thank you. Bye.